Hello, and welcome to the Atlanta Film Festival Creative Conference. Today, I'm here to talk about extras and all things extras with Extras Casting Atlanta, Patrick Ingram, who has been in this industry a very, very long time and has worked on all kinds of crazy projects. Welcome, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
So I was looking back at your credits on IMDb, and the first thing that I saw, and obviously IMDb back in the day wasn't the end all be all that it seems to be today. Like we didn't even think about adding your credits, but I showed the first credit you had on there as Rush Hour 2 as a PA.
Yep.
Was that like literally your first job in the industry?
No, I would think so. I did a couple of little movies here. There was one called The Good Neighbor or Killer Next Door that was put together. That was the first thing I did out of college, and that was with Danica McKellar and Billy D. Williams and then Tobin Bell, who ended up being in all the Saw movies. So that was cool. That was my first exposure, but it was a small one. And so after that, I had interned in California and I moved to Los Angeles. And then the people that I interned for immediately, I worked on like an office, and then yeah, they got me the job on Rush Hour 2 because it was filming in Hong Kong and Las Vegas and LA. So yeah, that was my first one. That was the first definitely big thing, and the first time I actually got in the credits in a movie. And I remember my grandmother came, she took her to see Rush Hour 2, and she actually really enjoyed it, just see my name in the credits. But yeah.
That's awesome. So where did you go to school?
UGA.
Okay,
And
that's
I
what I
had,
thought.
yeah,
How did
and
you end
so
up
and I
getting
had
a
actually, yeah,
citizenship
I
in
had
LA?
majored in telecom, and the plan was more for like broadcast television. I actually had an interview with CNN that I bailed on because I got called for something about that Killer Next Door movie, and I decided to go, and I just thought that I would, try that again later, and then headed down this path.
So how'd you get the internship in LA? Because that's unusual, especially
Yeah.
back then.
No, that was I just found a few places. That was one I had ended up because I interned twice. It was at New Line Cinema. So they had summer internship there because it was, I mean, they were the smallest studio at the time. It was right before, they weren't really a studio, but they were more like one, and it was right before the Lord of the Rings. So they hadn't completely exploded, but they had Rush Hour, the first Rush Hour, and Austin Powers. So I mean, they were pretty decent size. And yeah, and I'd gotten one there. They needed somebody 3 days a week. And then I had found, and I did another one at the small MTV production company. So I'd found I was working 5 days, and at New Line, you would get paid some. So yeah, I mean, it was just digging around there and ended up scoring two. And it's helped a lot. It really has.
So what brought you back to Atlanta? Like how long did you stay in Atlanta before you came back here?
I was in it. So I started in
Or LA
Atlanta. I
rather?
did that one little movie and maybe a commercial or two, and then as a PA, and then I went out there. And then no, it was it was honestly a catalyst of a couple of things. I'd done this movie that now I remember, Run Ronnie Run, that I
Yep, I
helped
saw
play
that on the
Lori
list. Yeah,
Maloney,
yeah.
yeah, do extras casting. And so that was before I had left as well. And that was the first time I did extras casting. And then it was a simultaneous, I was getting kicked out of my apartment in LA, and September 11th happened, and Lori had had a job that she offered. So I came back here to work on something, never really planning to stay. I was, the plan would be to go back and forth, but slowly it got busier here than it was there. And there was really no reason to. And it just kind of, that was that. I mean, it never really, even until very recently, it was always in the back of her mind, would go there if needed, but it was just easier here. It really was. And got
So
into
you
the
were
next little
doing
niche.
PA work. Like what made you go from PA work to extras casting work? Was it just an opportunity or
Yeah,
were
it
you
was
like,
just
hey,
that
I'd
it
like
was
to do
just
that?
yeah, no, it was just I had been working in offices, and I met Lori. She needed some help on Run Ronnie Run. So I had helped her with that and just kind of fell into it. We got along, and then so it was just as you start, when you get into all this, there's all these other little niches of things that you would never think about. And so yeah, and it just kind of happened. And then I didn't necessarily, I didn't do it straight through. I went back and worked in production several other times, and then would come back and help her, but not always. Like she did a couple of things in those in between years that I turned her down, and I was just like, I'm going to try something else for a little while. And then she took over something and didn't want to do it anymore. This movie Stroke of Genius, the Bobby Jones. And so that was the one that, yeah, she officially got hired on it. And then like after like a week of prep, she was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. But Patrick can handle it. And she basically talked them into hiring me once she was going to leave. And yeah, that was pretty much that.
Interesting. So what, other than the opportunity, and obviously you were good at it, because I mean, in some respects, there were like a handful of casting people back then. I mean, like in my mind, you were one of the first extras casting people. Now, obviously we had them before because we've had movies here long before 2000. What made you stay? Like, what made you go like, this is the thing I'm passionate about?
You know, it was as I was getting more and more into this, it's, you know, at least from this world, it's a unique way to do it because I kind of, you know, I got a little bit of the best of both worlds. I got to go to set, but I wasn't stuck on set for like 12 hours a day. You know, I had to go back to the office. So at times, like we figured out a better balance now and having, but at times before it was pretty relentless because it was kind of, you had to be the last one up to make sure you could send everything. And then we would get up at 4 a.m. and go sign everybody in and then do all that. So it was just kind of working around the clock, but at least you were kind of on your own time. And so I like that of it. And then, yeah, this whole zombie thing, honestly, is probably what really took it this far. And at the particular time when Zombieland came here, you know, I was the only person doing it. That was it. There wasn't anyone else yet. Now there's tons, dozens. But yeah, and so I think that, you know, I was young and I think the Zombieland, they obviously wanted somebody else, but just because I was the only one here and they decided it wasn't worth bringing somebody in, they kind of went for it. And then because I had done Zombieland, they hired me for The Walking Dead because they knew there was kind of this little niche of like people with like movement and makeup. And then I did that for 12 years. So it was those two things. It really was just being the only person here and getting Zombieland. Kind of everything else has fallen from that, really.
Yeah. Yeah, because you did. I'll get into Walking Dead later because that was a unique job.
Yeah,
So what is an extra? And you know, some people call them extra, some people prefer background, some people call them atmosphere. Like, what is the current terminology and what is an extra and what is kind of the duties and responsibilities, if there is such a thing?
yeah, and I know a lot of people, yeah, like to call them background artists, and that's totally cool. I've kind of just always stuck with extra because it's in my name. It's in the title, and there's nothing wrong with it for sure. We've always respected them. But yeah, they're basically the easy answer for them is it's anyone that's on camera that doesn't speak. So it falls into anybody. It can be background, but then a lot of what we get that ends up being like more difficult is like specialty stuff, like all the stand-ins, the people that look similar to actors that will stand there while they light scenes, any kind of photo doubles. So it's somebody that's on camera at a distance enough that you can't tell it's the actor, but they're not doing a stunt or anything dangerous. So yeah, it's like anytime you're watching a movie and you see like a main cast member off in the distance and you can't, if you cannot tell that it's them, then it's an extra. You know, if it's them, they will make sure you know it's them. Any other time they're in the blur, those are the people that we get to. And then all the other, you know, filling a restaurant and anything else you would typically think about that's on the camera that doesn't speak.
So what is the day like of a typical extra? And obviously every job is completely different, but you know, generally extras do not get call sheets. They might get a map, but they don't get a call sheet. You
Exactly.
guys give them a time and a map and they go to extras parking generally.
Yep.
So kind of how does their day proceed and how does your day proceed? Because you guys still have somebody there checking everybody in, right? That's not the AD department.
Yeah, no, it depends. It's a combo. You know, there's usually like a line. So we'll always now then these days, and especially, you know what, honestly, it had kind of faded, but what actually like probably killed us going to set was COVID. Just in these last few years, even pre then, if there were more than a handful of people, it would you know, typically be expected somebody would go. But now then, since then's the AD and we're more like a remote, I'm kind of always on call, but I won't necessarily go because for 3 years I wasn't allowed to go anymore. I was the one that was immediately cut out. And now then they've just kind of, we're used to it. So it's easier. So we're just kind of on call. But typically, so we would send the extra the night before the map and you know a list of things to bring everybody here because the extras in Georgia there's not a specific rule so everyone's expected to bring all their own clothes and you know several options so we'll send pictures or a list of what to bring so you'll park you'll get there early typically the extras aside from like locations and people that open up and turn on the lights, the extras will typically be the first people in. They get them in so they can make sure that they're all ready and because it'll take a while to get everybody ready, and then they can just be sitting there waiting. So they don't. So you'll typically be the first ones in. It'll be very quiet, sign everybody in, and then you go through hair and makeup and wardrobe, which here generally we expect you to do all those things yourself. You'll come in with your own makeup done, your own hair done. If the guy's playing a cop, he needs to come clean shaven, but there'll be hair and makeup people there to like kind of touch up, and they'll take a look at you and approve you. But you'll generally be expected to arrive ready, and we would send notes of how we wanted that to be. Sometimes pictures, sometimes just writing it out. We'll be as specific as we can, but yep. And then you'll show up, grab your paperwork, which these days too, COVID helped. Most of the time now it's digital. You'll do it on your phone, but there's still some old school, like doing one right now that it's still just the old paper voucher. So it's a little bit of both.
So it's interesting. I mean, I have certainly asked extras to bring clothes on smaller jobs, but I didn't realize that doing your own hair, makeup, and wardrobe and coming with your own wardrobe is pretty standard now. That's
It is,
new
especially
info.
on movies and TV. We'll say with the one side note is that I do some commercials sometimes. And because the agencies prefer, even though most of the extras here will be non-union, we do use a lot of SAG extras on commercials. And for those, they will go back to the more standard rules, and they'll ask them to bring things, but they'll keep it to a limit because they get paid for it. They get paid extra.
Well, that's
Sometimes
what
our what?
do they not get a pay bump for bringing their own wardrobe
The
anymore?
general BG, no, they don't. That's what I was just about to
Interesting.
say. They would only, it's just here, it's just become an unwritten rule that you're expected to bring a few options. The only time that we do is they will get pay bumps here, but if it's only for something specialty. With this boom, as you know, a lot more movies and TV shows have just ended up setting their shows in Atlanta just because it's easier. There's so many things. So when that happens, a lot of times we can use real Atlanta PD, and they of course get paid if they come in their own uniform. And then like a tuxedo or an evening gown, we'll pay people for those. But just generally showing up in your regular pedestrian clothes or going to be a fan or in a restaurant, even like dressing nice or church, all that type of stuff. It's just, yeah, people just are expected to bring things, and it's just, yeah, it's just kind of the way it is here. Nobody really complains, and
Copy you.
yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea. So what is, because we're not a unionized state and you don't have unionized extras that kind of do this for a living, like in LA, that's people's jobs.
Yeah.
How difficult, how hard is it to find these people? Because every job again is different. You want young, you want old, you want white people, you want a mix of brown and black, you want, older, younger, female, male, kids. Like how difficult, and it's weekdays.
Yeah, exactly. No,
So
that's the tough part, that yeah, it kind of depends, when it's like open, if it's you can use a lot of older people or other specific things, it gets easier. But there has been, I mean, I guess it's, always found in the old days too, just did touch base with people with like flexible jobs. Like there's a lot of real estate agents that have always done this, I mean, because they can get away. It's a lot easier than for them to
yeah.
get away in the middle of the week and things like that. Policemen and firemen and medical professionals, all these people that have there's a ton of them that love to do this because they've got the time in the middle of the week that they know they can pull it off. And then there are, I mean, as it's gotten busier here, there's a crew of people that definitely, try to do it professionally, even non-union. And sometimes they'll take things, that sometimes they'll work all night and then try to jump on something in the morning and they'll go 2 days without sleeping just to make sure they get some extra time in there. So it's a mix. There are a handful of professionals. And at times like this, like it's starting to pick up here, but it's not super busy. So you can tell that makes it exponentially easier to get people. They're out there. See, it's more like New York and LA like that right now. From that is that like every day there's a bunch of people that will reach out to me and be like, hey, I'm available if you need anything. I mean, I'll get a ton of texts, and it's cool that it helps sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't matter. So it's really, the busier it is, that the harder it gets to get the professional types. And then that's when, I mean, each project's got its own niche, and you'll just try to get the words out to those fans. because it is for anything I'd say I do, it's about half people I've seen before and that have done this a ton, and then half that are just checking it out because they got referred maybe by a location or they just happened to see this one post and wanted to check it out. But it is, I'd say for every person that does it, it's like 50-50. One loves it and one's like, oh, that was great. Thanks so much. Don't ever call me again.
My parents were like that. I got them on as extras in a commercial that I did with Steve Colby back in the day. That we were in Mount Pleasant, and they needed an older white couple who drove a Cadillac who looked conservative. And I'm like, I hate to say it, but that's my parents. My mom loved it. My mom's a people person. She had so much fun learning about everything. And that was their first experience seeing me work. Like, they didn't understand what my job was until I prepped the commercial for 2 days out of their house. And then they got to come on set and watch because I production managed and I AD'd it. My dad was not as enamored. So they hit it off with the extras casting guy, and my mom would get a lot of commercials, and she would do, I mean, she's been in Piggly Wiggly. I mean, she did all kinds of stuff. My dad would do more of the specialty stuff. So if there was, I think they did 2 different commercials for like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, but both of them, which is weird because they're different companies, were on the same yacht, and it was like the same commercial, but one you were supposed to look more conservative and another, a little more relaxed. My dad's like, on a boat, I'm in. Classic cars, I'm in. Anything else, they were like, no. But yeah, my mom had so much fun. But yeah, I recommend it to production assistants starting out, because a lot of people think, well, this is how you start just as an actor. And certainly that is a great way to start as an actor. But for crew, it's for PAs or people who want to be in the business, I think it's a great way for them to get on set with low pressure, where they can learn, like, how does the parking work? Here, make him a wardrobe. Where's extras holding? And they can kind of watch the machine and then meet other PAs when appropriate after they've done it a couple of times.
Oh yeah, no, and it used to be, I mean, thinking back, as I mentioned that, but yeah, in the early days too, when I first started doing this, no, we used to get all mad. It would happen all the time because we had, if we had somebody that was really good and that had worked with us as a regular, especially like we'd pull for a stand-in or something, it would be like after a week, like one of the ADs would call and be like, so sorry, you got to find a new stand-in. We're stealing so-and-so. I'm like, man, it happened all the time.
That's a great story that I will relay to my PA Academy students.
No, it really did. It used to be a constant for sure. A bunch of I'd have to go back. It's now it all like blurs together. But no, I know for sure there's some people that are like ADs now that started out working as extras. That it's the first time anybody ended up seeing them. But yeah, made some friends and then would ask around and get a PA gig out of that. But it happened all the time. It is a great way.
Yeah.
And it's a good way too on the other end, which luckily doesn't happen often, but there's a handful of people that, yeah, I mean, had been thinking it was actually, they won this auction thing and it was John Smoltz's daughter who, was like teenage daughter had won this thing and ended up, and it was this really cool one too that didn't end up being big, but it was this movie called Jane Mansfield's Car that Billy Bob Thornton directed. Yeah, and Kevin Bacon was in it. There were so many stars this day, and it was over in Inman Park. Got her in this awesome scene, and then his ex-wife or mom had like reached out, was like, thank you so much. It was like, now she knows that she does not want to do this at all.
Yeah, it's an acquired taste. That's
it is.
Sure. Yeah. So you've mentioned stand-ins a couple of times, and I was going to talk about this later, but I don't want to keep bringing that up and not kind of defining that role, because a lot of people don't realize that stand-ins usually come from extras casting, and they usually come from, this is the good extra that I can trust, that shows up on time, that knows how to keep their mouth shut, follows directions well. How do you find your stand-ins out of your group of people? How does that come about? And what is a stand-in in more depth?
Yeah, so the stand-in, like I said, I mean, most of the time it's just going to be simply someone who looks at least similar enough to the actors. And, they bigger things will have a stand-in for every single person that speaks. Most things will just do like a crew of 3 or 4. You'll kind of have utilities and they do several people. That's the general average, but they look close enough to them. And then they work really with the camera department, go in and watch the rehearsals. And then while the actors leave and go get ready, they literally stand there while they light the scenes. And sometimes it's movement that they had to pay attention to, and sometimes it's just lighting. And it used to be, obviously as it got busier and busier here, it was simple as we just tried to find someone that looked like the person, because we would know that there just wasn't the chances of finding someone that has set experience and is this height and has this hair color were very slim. But now then, as it's been busier and busier, it's switched to the exact opposite, that most things will be like, they're like, hey, find somebody that's got some experience. They always want experience, but stand-in experience can be tough. And I know it's frustrating for a lot of the background. So that's why at least we pull from people that have been an extra before. That's, at the very least, know that it'll be tougher and as it's busier to find somebody. So yeah, at least somebody that's been an extra at least a couple of times knows what it's like. And then it's not that complicated. You can explain it to them what they'll have to do. And it's really super easy. It's just all about paying attention. You just have, it seems like in your head, you wouldn't be doing that much, but you really, and you're not a lot of the time, but you have to just be on edge the entire time for those few minutes that they do need you. And that's, all it is. It really is. It makes it simple that it's not, it's a 12-hour day, but it's not that grueling. You're sitting there waiting a lot of it, but you just have to always be semi paying attention when you're sitting there waiting. And so, yeah, there's a lot of people now that do that full time around here, but we're always pulling in new folks. I just did yesterday and had to get somebody new. And so, yeah, at least try to find somebody that's been an extra a time or two and then looks as close as possible and then hope that they'll be the next great one.
Yeah, a lot of people have this misconception that, well, I'm not going to be on screen, so what can I possibly learn? And I'm like, are you kidding me? You are on set watching the major actors do their spiel, and then you're coming in and you are listening to the director, you're listening to the DP talk about how they're setting up the scene, you're listening to the actors during their rehearsal before you stand in for them, talking about the motivation and why they're moving different. The educational opportunity is incredible. I did a conversation probably in COVID, maybe that first year that we went in COVID, with two of the guys who were the stand-ins on Atlanta. And they were actors, hadn't blown up big or anything, but they were actors. And people had asked them, well, isn't that a step back? And they're like, are you kidding me? I'm with Donald Glover on set every day, and I'm getting the best film school you could possibly get.
No, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, no, I've got a good friend that's how he ended up, and when things have worked out, it happens. They'll pull stand-ins in to do little parts. We've done it on several series for sure. So no, I would say, that is, it pays a little better, and yeah, no, it is invaluable for sure. And you're in there. Yeah. You get to know everybody, and some of them, yeah, there's one that I'm working with now that's a pretty big star, and it's super important to him, so he works with him every day and is like talking to him about it. And this guy's like freaking out. It's pretty cool. So
that's awesome.
yeah.
So, what is it that, well, let's jump back first. So I want to be an extra. How do I get started? What do I need? Do I need to go out and get expensive headshots? Like, what do I have to do to be an extra?
Yeah, no, and that's the easiest part, is that some that always try to do headshots, but no, as a general rule, we prefer not headshots. Just any kind of good basic cell phone picture is perfect. And it's always easy, and always end up telling people, and still, it just has to be you alone. And anytime you send a picture and you have to like explain anything in it, like, this looks just like me, except I don't have the beard and my hair is red now. So anytime you have to write anything like that, just go take another picture. We really like it. It's just you from today standing up against the wall. And it doesn't matter if you don't look great. It really doesn't, it's just best to be as real as possible.
Yeah.
So that part is easy. You should never have to spend anything.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that cracks me up, is they think they need to like look a certain way, but they're forgetting that they are background and their face is really never going to be identifiable easily. But now, do you just need like a headshot, like, kind of you and I right now, or do you also need like a full body front and a full body side?
Yeah, in a perfect
with clothes,
world,
people with clothes.
when it gets into something real involved, we would ask. So I would say, I mean, like a shot like us right now, and then maybe like a full length if you can. Those two are perfect. Sometimes we would need profile. Sometimes, depending on with the nature of the photo double and other type things, we'll ask for people for pictures for the back of their head. But those are so specific, and when we need them, that's not anything you really need to keep handy. We'll ask. If you've got a good headshot or waist up shot and then a full length, it could not be more perfect.
Yeah. And that makes sense because before I used to have to do headshot, full body, front and side. But now that they're bringing, and the full body was for wardrobe, so they could guess sizes. But if they're
Yeah.
bringing their own clothes, that eliminates that need. That makes perfect sense.
Exactly. Yeah. And we'll ask for, a listing of all their sizes. But yeah, no, just so we have for other uniform things. But we just all plug that into, we've got a little database sheet we'd hang on to. And then, like I said, it's just here still it is that there are enough professional extras, but there's not enough that it's really, we have a database, but it's constantly updating. We just, to a certain extent, start from scratch on each project. So it's not like anything we have to keep on file forever. So it's constantly updating anyway.
It must be nice to now do things digitally. I remember having filing cabinets full of headshots that I used to keep. And what
Oh
a
man, me
pain
too.
to
No,
like,
I had this. I mean,
oh,
I had man, like half a room full of them. No, it was remember, and all these Polaroids. I mean, I had thousands of them because that's what I used to when we would do movies before. I would just have these email accounts. No, we would do a movie and I would just save all the boxes. So I'd have like 5 bangers boxes of Polaroids and info sheets from these giant casting calls. And then when something else would start, just start flipping through them and calling people. So yes, that makes it. I mean, we couldn't. That's how it's nice. It's a combo, so things are smaller and different. But yeah, I can work on more than one thing at once now, which wouldn't in those days would have not. It was not possible.
yeah. So do you have a website?
I do, but it's funny. I'll say no because I'm not using it right now. It was in work, so I do. The extrascastingatlanta.com exists, but it was this weird form, so it's been setting in limbo for the last couple of months. So right now, where I post everything and still works great is it's facebook.com/extrascastingatlanta. That's our go-to, and it still has always worked out the best. And talk to somebody about updating the website. I'm trying to see because I'm trying something new maybe about linking where they end up and it'll all automatically go into this database. But for the moment, Facebook is still working great. And so we've just it's hanging in limbo.
Got it. The reason I ask is because I'm wondering, a lot of people wonder what the protocol is. And I feel like in the early days, a lot of people had on the website, like how to be an extra. So
Yeah, we
is there
have this thing that
information
me and
somewhere that
Janelle.
you have?
Yeah, it's on our Facebook. It is, and that's where I leave it. That Janelle and I, that she mostly that works with me forever, who is now home for a while taking care of her new baby, but she wrote up this thing that we ended up calling Extras 101, and it is on our main Facebook page and could end up listing, and it's perfect. It really is. And I know some other people have stolen it and shared it, but it's just a general idea. And yeah, and I think it's good. It's gone full circle because we never really fully updated it for the madness that was having the COVID test 5 times before you worked and everything else that took it to this whole other level. It was crazy everything we had to do. It was relentless how it changed the game. But now that it's circled back, so you don't have to do any of that. And we were still doing that up until last summer. It was last May, the last show that I did before the strike. We were still regularly COVID testing every other day. And then whenever they lifted on like the beginning of last May, they just laid off the entire health and safety department and just pretended like it never happened. It was literally within a Friday that we had to deal with them every day and test anyone that walked in the door. And then that Friday, they just laid them all off and pretended like it never happened.
Yeah, my husband was very happy not to get daily or every other day nasal and swab
No,
tests.
I'm sure.
He's
Yeah,
like
and
a
I remember that.
dagger.
Yeah,
Oh,
when we first went back and they were doing the real hardcore one, like when you like in Labor Day of 2020 when it first went back. No, I would have to because I was doing 2 things, and even though I was remote, they wanted me to. So no, I would drive and COVID test every single day. I did it for months.
yeah. Very glad that is over. What
Indeed.
So you mentioned, extras, and you mentioned stand-ins, and then you also mentioned photo doubles. What else? What other, is that the last one? What else does extras casting provide? And what
Yeah,
is the photo double that you find?
Yeah, the photo though said that one would be that anyone that looks close enough to the actual cast that they are on camera as them. So it would be it's a non-stunt driving. Like I said, anybody walking off where you can see them way off in the distance, or it's just a piece of a shoulder. So that happens a lot, So it'll be all these little pieces of somebody that looks just similar enough to them to do little distant shots here and there. And then yeah, and then sorry, did you ask about it was photo doubles and
If there is any other position that extras
yeah,
done.
and that
Yeah.
was so I mean, like I'm doing one right now where we have to get a band and they're super featured. They're getting paid more than the regular extras, but they are still extras because they're not actually playing. If they were playing and singing, then that would go into a musician or a SAG thing, but because the recording's already done and it's a hero actress that is singing, but she's already recorded it, so they just want them to look like they know what they're doing. So they're bringing their instruments, they did rehearse, they've replayed to this recording, but they're actually not doing anything. It's silent. They're not really playing. They're pretending to background sing. So it makes them extras. They're very specific extras that, are, like I said, getting paid a fair amount more than everybody else, but they're still extras. So there's always those weird little things like that. Anytime that they can get away with somebody being an extra, they will. So if they're actually, even if it really looks like they're doing something specific, as long as they're really not, then they'll be an extra. So I'm trying to think, I mean, any kind of, something that would seem stunty, but not dangerous. Running, things like that might be specialty. Thinking we'll get like running doubles because there'll be certain people that can't or won't run near as far. So it'll be a photo double, but it's just somebody that gets a real higher rate because they can run a lot and won't pass out. And yeah, I mean, and then anything else, like I'm trying to think, is just weird little niche stuff. So,
Yeah.
it's project to project, but no, that's pretty much it, And then the rant, the usual restaurants and hospitals and churches.
Yeah. So I had one a little fascinating note, and I'm sure you know this person. But my friend Roxanne was the photo double on The Walking Dead for Carl.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Most
And
definitely.
it's funny because she is a woman in her probably 30s, maybe
Hmm.
late 30s, early 40s now, long, very thick hair.
Hmm.
And I would have never thought that she would be this kid's photo double.
Yep,
But
no.
when she put her hair up, like she was involved in one of my classes and in this writing workshop that I've run for over a decade. And when she put up her hair and put a ball cap on and turned her back to us and like kind of took on that like Carl body language, I was like, holy shit. And even just from the side of her face, I was amazed. And it never occurred to me that like a grown ass woman with 4 children could play the photo double for a kid. How
I
does
know, no,
something
it
like, how
is.
do you get outside the box like that and realize something like that?
That one, it's funny. And like, I remember seeing her on set when she was like wearing his hat. See, and sometimes it's always so many accidents, but that is common is, when we need a kid is that, we'll try to just find the shortest person possible that's over 18 to stand in for him. If it rarely doesn't work out that they can be a photo double like that, but at least, there's a lot of smaller women that stand in for kids. There's some that do it pretty regularly. And I think it was one day, it was like necessity, I mean, she had been there and was at least close enough to his height, and something happened. I don't know if he was sick or they needed to do something. And so it all happened on the fly. And then it was like, hey, his pants and shirt fit her and, put the hat on and good to go. And then she did it all the time.
Yeah, she was great. And that,
Yeah.
it never occurred to me. And I just thought that
Well,
was brilliant.
yeah, it is. It's just, yeah, we used to get, because it is, and that's, it's people try here and there for like doubles for stuff for kids to like use little people, and there are a few, but honestly most of the little people that are here in town that do this, they're SAG and they get paid really well for the things that they do. So it'll pop up. There's a couple of guys that I know that are super cool and they'll do it here and there, but they're just not interested in regular stand-in work. They get too much acting work. And so,
Yeah.
because people will always come up, and if they've got like movies that have a kid as a lead that's like working every single day, it'll come up. But then they usually don't want to pay the rate that we're asking. So we'll go find somebody else in the regular extra mix that's the smallest woman we can possibly find and try to make it work.
Well, and that makes me think of like the twins and triplets. Like how often, because so for those of you who don't know, there's labor laws and there's you can only use kids, especially babies and youngsters, for only so long. Kids have to go to school. So how often are you out there trying to find twins, triplets, anything, so that you can switch them back and forth on identical, obviously.
Oh yeah, all the time. I have a set that was just working yesterday. I have to find that was like 2 years old. And The Walking Dead, it was funny. That one was a constant because for several seasons, not there were one of them had like, a baby and then a toddler daughter, and not too much time had passed. And so it would be like mid-season, we'd do like 2 or 3 episodes, and then they'd call and they'd be like, we saw the dailies. It's like, Judith's getting pretty big. You need to go find another one. And so they just try to go find another set of twins. But yeah, the labor laws here, they used to be not as good. They've definitely they're more mirrored California. So yeah, anybody under 6 months, they can only be on set 2 hours. And that's from the moment they get there to the moment they leave. And it's only like on camera for like 20 or 30 minutes. So they definitely, anytime it's anything under, and then 2 years and the 6 month to 2 year range, it's like 4 hours. So it's a little longer, but still the longer shoot day. So yeah, anytime that it's like a baby like that, they'll still, even it's funny, they'll sometimes use them so they can extend the day, but they still most of the time try to keep it to the same 2 hours. And it's just so you can switch them back and forth if somebody's freaking out, and then you just try to do it super fast and then get them out of there. And yeah, they've even got it more specific. It's only certain if they're 6 months or under, you can only do it. It's like 9 to 11 a.m., 2 to 3, or 6 to 8. That's it. It's one of those 3 windows of 2 hours. It's the only time you can have them.
Interesting.
And that's really cool that they did that, because they had kept it very vague. So they had like laws for minors, but it kind of went from a day old to 15 was all kind of the same.
Yeah. Not good.
No.
I mean, living or being married to an AD, I understand the challenges of making that work. And that's again why the twins are so important.
No, for sure. And every time, and yeah, and that's the problem with twins, is that you can't keep those on file. They, unfortunately, that's a constant rotation. So just try to keep up with all the local mothers of multiple clubs, and just every few months it'll be like, I need another one, because it's almost always babies. So it's unfortunate, because then they'll be 2 and 3 and get older, and then they'll want to keep doing it, and then it's kind of this no man's land. It's either babies or like 5 or older. And so then they wait till they're 5 and then they jump back in there.
What makes a good extra? Like, what is your ideal perfect extra that you can rely on and want to hire over and over if you could?
Yeah, that really is a good question, because it's like, and I know, and we feel bad, me and Janelle and I worked with forever, we feel bad sometimes for the extras, because one thing that I would say is, it's like, you want them to be smart and well informed, but you don't want somebody that asks too many questions either, is like constantly bugging you, because then it's like, they're excited, but there's just so much going on. So it's someone who's very succinct, who gets back to you, who answers you when you ask. So they send a very succinct email, don't give you too much information, and then when you reply and tell them the details, they reply back very simply to you and say, yes or no, I would like to do this. And then when you send them everything, so I would say it's very responsive, with everybody keeping it just to the information needed. And then once on set, it's just about, being polite and respectful. It's all sorts of different personalities and people, and some get along and some don't, but it's just like anything else, I guess, when you're thrown together with random people, is you just want people, that are friendly and quiet. Readers on set are good, anybody that had, I remember there was this one like PA that had these little stickers he would go around and give to all the extras that were quietly reading. And so in between takes, give them a little reward. So it's just about, understanding that it's tough and that everybody's excited, but trying to just be cool. So, I would say, I mean, it's the two big things for us are, yeah, like always responsive, because it's like, there's this big problem of once somebody, ends up sending everything. They'll say, oh yeah, I'd love to do this. And then you send them everything and then you start trying to text them and call them and they never respond. So it's like, it's just once you've committed to it, just make sure you got your phone handy. So if you see something from us, just say, hey, I got that, so we're not wondering. So it's responsiveness and then just generally politeness and respect is easy enough.
And I think the reader thing is a good note because there's a lot of hurry up and wait.
There
Sometimes
is.
you'll
No, yeah,
go
you
and
need
sit for
something to
12 hours
do.
and
Yeah.
never work. Like you'll never leave the room.
Yeah, no, exactly. It happens all the time. It really does. And that's a frustrating part of it, but for a million different reasons. They figured out there wasn't enough room in there. They figured out that so they didn't get to it, but it happens all the time. So it's a lot. Yeah, anytime that you've got something that you can do, and a lot of people that work other jobs or have remote jobs that can pull it off and bring their computer, it's great. It really can be.
Yeah. And I didn't even think about that with remote work. But yeah,
Oh yeah,
I
no, it
know
comes
people,
up because somebody will be like, it's like, do you think we'll have, it's like, I'm trying to schedule it. They'll try to schedule like a meeting and make sure that it's at lunch so they know they won't get in trouble. But no, people, they'll get creative for sure.
interesting. So what is the craziest thing you've ever been asked to fill as an extra or double, or like, what is like one of the craziest things somebody has asked you to find?
Oh man. I mean, honestly, I have to say it was like but there was no, I mean, honestly, there's this movie Wanderlust
I
that we
remember that.
did that was with Paul Rudd and Jennifer Aniston, and it's like they go and live out in this hippie commune. And there's this one guy, Jolo Triglio, ended up on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and he's a nudist in it. He's naked for the entire movie. But he has like this prosthetic genitalia. It's not real, but you only see it in like little flashes, but you see his butt a lot and stuff. But there was like this close-up scene that I think it's like Paul Rudd's like taking a nap on the couch and he's like wakes up and he's like right next to this guy's crotch, and they wanted for whatever reason real genitalia that they needed for the scene that was to match this prosthetic. And so we ended up having to do, I didn't end up had a couple of associates that had to do that, but we had to put this thing out and then try to match this prosthetic genitalia to real, and like had to do all these things and then ended up getting these pictures. And then finally we found the right match and sent him. And then I guess it didn't look right. And then so there wasn't enough hair. And so some makeup artist had to glue individual hairs onto this guy's genitals while he was on set. And then he had a scene with Paul Rudd. And, so that is definitely, there's all kinds of other weird little things like that. But that one always jumps out. It was nothing like that, I hope, will ever happen again. It was completely insane.
Yeah, I could not. I'm just gonna
And the
stop
fact that it
all of that
wasn't
from entering
real,
my
that we
brain.
were matching something that wasn't real, and they just I couldn't, none of it made sense at all.
Ah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
So what are some of I'm sure you have do not hire extras. So what are some of the stories of like, I had to fire them because, so I'm sure that there is a litany of them. I had to fire an extra once, just bad behavior and arguing with me. Like I was a PA and I had to go to my boss, and this guy thought like he was somebody for some reason and tried to get me fired and got himself fired. And then 6 months later on a commercial I'm production managing, he shows up, and boy, was he quiet as he walked by me and didn't say a word and was on his best behavior the whole time. But I'm sure that you've had some people do some really stupid, crazy shit.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. It was just like, I mean, I'm trying to think, there's all the typical one, I mean, just like with anything else that you would think, just somebody being a straight a-hole and just, I mean, the general, that'll obviously always get you kicked out. But the things, that would think from somebody that seemed like a typically an otherwise good extra, or maybe even somebody that was a typically good performer, looked good. But the main one that I can think of is it's happened a couple of times. It starts giving notes especially on things that it's like, like a TV show like The Walking Dead, or maybe where they had seen the person that's directing before. That's the worst thing that could happen, is them to have seen a director or somebody a time before, and at least the person, say, remembers their name. So then that gets, and it's like, oh, well, he said my name, and then it's like starts giving them notes, and then it's like they'll tell them to do something, and it'll be like, no, I don't think so. Don't you think I should walk this way? And then you'll just see blah, 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 and then you'll just see him whisk away, and then all the other extras will understand. It's not even really a conversation. It's just like, it really is. It's not like the director like yells at him. This person will just say, it's like, no, I don't know. I think I should do that. And then really you'll say, and then a PA will just grab him by the arm and he'll just vanish. And then I'll get the call, please don't have so-and-so back ever again.
Yeah.
But
How
that's pretty
often does
much, I
that
think it
happen?
is. It's giving notes, extras. You're not there ever. You're never in a place, no matter how friend. And that's when it gets worse too. And I feel bad for people, but sometimes it's the more comfortable, like a cast member or a director gets with an extra, then it does something to their brain and makes them go insane. And it doesn't work like that. It's like you were in there and now you blew it.
Yeah. And all the ADs talk, and suddenly like their phone stops ringing from anybody. How often does that happen?
Oh man, no, it happens all the time. I mean, honestly, I would say I've been lucky the last several years, as I haven't had too many big incidences, but was just texting with somebody a couple of days ago because something happened on this Genesis Superman movie of someone that I had used a lot. And they were just giving me the heads up of what had happened, and probably shouldn't use this person anymore. And so, yeah, I mean, all the time.
So do you have like a course correction conversation with these people, or do you just stop calling
No,
them?
no, absolutely. And then there's certain things that, like we always like to say, there's also like personality things, and like, with stand-ins and stuff, sometimes a DP just doesn't like somebody and it doesn't always make sense. And there'll be plenty of times on the other end too that it'll be like, hey, so sorry, you're done on this one, but you're cool with us and I'll call you again soon, and so.
Yeah. I assume though there are people that aren't cool with you and you won't call them again soon.
No, for
Is
sure.
that a
There's a
conversation
yeah.
you have, or do you stop calling them? Because sometimes it's not, there are
No,
people that
yeah,
you
it
can't have a
depends. Yeah,
conversation.
most of the time with those, that, yeah, it's best to just kind of, let it float away, because it really depends. I mean, completely honest with you, it's just a mental illness factor in that for sure. If I could tell that somebody was just being a butthole or made a mistake, I'll talk to them about it and be like, hey, you're not going to work with me again, but don't do this again. And it's cool. But most of the time with those kind of incidents, you can just kind of tell it'll turn into something, and it's best to just let it fade away. Maybe they will get another chance. Probably not, but never say never, and just leave it at that, rather than I'm never going to call you again.
Yeah. And I mean, it's some of those conversations again, like aren't worth having
Exactly.
because yeah, it's kind of a waste of oxygen.
Correct.
Um,
It's not it won't matter. And all it's going to do is just end up getting, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So we talked about the coming makeup and hair ready and bringing your own clothes. What are some of the other things that you might require them to bring that they get bumped for? Like, I know that there should be like a car bump, I think, if they bring a
Yeah, no, that's
vehicle.
one for sure. And especially, yeah, as gas has gotten expensive, that one's gotten better. It's pretty decent. I would think around here it might even be a little more than like what the SAG car bump would be. And then, yeah, so cars, bikes, anything, I think about anything with wheels always comes up. You want skateboarders and bicyclists and motorcycles. And then sometimes, like, I mean, if it's for sure, want them to have like a backpack or specific computer bag, or like a laptop for like a classroom scene, we'll give a few bucks for that. Usually, a lot of times there's different things these days where they want people to bring their cell phones. That one kind of falls into the clothing one, that if they need their cell phone for a scene, it's just kind of expected to say, hey, pull out your cell phone, and they're not going to really give a bump for that. But yeah, and then, above and beyond that would just be like specialty things like musical instruments and things like that.
So do you have, so you've mentioned that you have a longtime person that you work with. Do
Mhm.
you, I would guess you don't really need extras castings assistants anymore since the ADs are doing stuff on set. Like how often do you, like how big is your staff? And
Yeah,
do you
I've got
often
two
hire
other
people up?
people that work with me, regularly when we can. But yeah, no, it's been a while, and everything's just been generally mid-range or smaller. But yeah, no, I remember, I mean, I did things with had big crowds, and yeah, we'd have 8 or 10 people working with us. But it's kind of, I've had the same two that are always around when I can. And then there's another couple that I know that I can call that do other things. And then otherwise, when it does come up, and sometimes I'll need help for a day or just like digging through stuff, but I still do the same thing and I pull from the extras, because they'll either be somebody that I'd met that I know was cool, or most of the time, as it's been in the back and forth, people will just mention it. I'll just send them for something and they're like, hey, thanks so much. Just want to let you know if you ever need any help, I'm available. And so I'll remember, and then it still comes up. It's just like it used to be that maybe I could have 5 or 6 people work with me for a couple of months. And now, it's never more than a day or two here and there, but it still does come up.
If somebody was interested in getting into extras casting, do you have recommendations or thoughts?
Yeah, no, I would say that it works just like that. That it's just like a PA. The easiest thing is to be an extra. Just keep emailing until you get in with somebody, and then tell them just like they did with me, and be like, "Hey, that's really cool, and please let me know if you ever need any help." And like I said, I usually always make note, and it's not that many. It's really not that many people that ask that. It's really not. So I remember.
Have you ever considered going into casting, or is this your niche? You've been doing it, you got a reputation, I'm done, I'm going to do this until I die?
Yeah, I think so now. At least, yeah, it just fell into my niche because I did for a little while, and and there's benefits to it. It's completely different. It's a totally different, it's all ahead of time work. But Shay, we were always friendly, and I helped her out, kind of like at least thinking about it. She needed some help. And so there were a few years there where I was like juggling both. I was still doing extras casting, and then I was running and doing casting calls with her all the time. And it was just, yeah, that was enough to know it's cool. And I definitely thought about it, and it comes up here and there still a little bit. But yeah, I think this is my niche, and it's the constant of on set and just the rolling of it all. It's a little crazy, but no, I like it. I think this is my go-to, at least for a while. You never know.
What would you I don't know what my next question should be. How often do you see extras rolling into speaking parts?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a ton, but more than it used to be for sure. Now that it's gotten busier, I've definitely noticed. No, there was one show that I was doing today. I had to get a stand-in for a guy that used to work for me as an extra all the time. He's this main character in this Amazon Prime show, working the whole episode. And no, so there's quite a few. I mean, they're around, seeing more and more. So I just did one. There's this movie that we're doing right now that a bunch of people just got a seat. There were 4 different people that got lines in a scene with Eddie Murphy. And I think as it was explained to me, he was just telling them too. He was like, say good morning to me. He was like, you say hello.
Yeah, because nobody's going to tell Eddie what to do anymore.
Exactly. And that's why they were like, okay.
So let's talk about a little bit about The Walking Dead, because you did, I assume all seasons of The Walking Dead. How did you get that gig, and how did it start? Because obviously nobody expected it to explode like it did. So how did you end up getting that gig, and kind of what were the initial requests?
Yeah, no, it was I had done Zombieland, so it had come up, and I had actually heard about it. It wasn't like it was, but I had never read the graphic novel, but I was familiar. I'd heard of it. And so it sounded cool, and just with the zombie thing. So I'd actually like poked around. I knew the line producer, and so he wanted to hire me, but there was like a little rigmarole, and it was funny. It was like doing Zombieland kind of got me in, and then they started to get weird about it. Maybe they wanted somebody different. And then it was fine. And then it was this little zombie right here. That was the very first one that they did like a month before they ever started filming. It was that bicycle girl. And they wanted me to see if I could find somebody for that. And so I did. And they flew her out to LA and did all this crazy makeup on her. And then so it just kind of fell in. It was only 6 episodes for that first season. But yeah, and then had to get a ton of zombies. And we did this whole zombie school thing that they had decided to put together. And no, so it was just like a regular job, and it all worked out well. And we continued on from there. And then it became this big giant phenomenon. But it was the Zombieland led directly to it. And then I happened to know this lady that did a great job as their original hero zombie. And yeah, and then 1 year into another, and then it just turned into this thing that was beyond what anybody could have guessed, for sure. Especially those few years in the middle, it was completely insane. It really was.
Talk about talk about the zombie school. I mean, a
Yeah,
lot of
that was
people
cool.
have
And
heard
that was we did ended up doing it like the first 5 or 6 seasons. So it was Greg Nicotero that was the producer, and then kind of the special effects makeup guru. He had just decided that he thought that it would be best because he was a very classical zombie person. He did not like, 28 Days Later and Zombieland specifically, and the fact that their zombies could run. He hated that. It
I
made him
hate fast
super mad.
zombies.
Yeah, no
We're all
running
gonna
zombies.
die.
Yeah, so he wanted them all to be this specific movement, so he decided to do. And the first one, they brought in this ballet dancer out of New York that kind of did it, and then it kind of that it wasn't perfect, and so they liked it. But then by the second season, he had figured out what he wanted, and had these videos that he had put together. So we did this big drawn out one. And then by the third season, like Good Morning America was there. It turned into it was bonkers. It really was. The third, fourth, and fifth seasons were very stressful. It felt like an event. The news was there. There were all these people. It was wild. It really was. But we trained a lot of good zombies. I would say those third, fourth, and fifth season, there's a handful of people I can think of that are all regular stunt people now. That was where they got their start at zombie school. So
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of friends who are stunt people who worked on that. When you had to find extras, were there specific things for that you were looking for, or did they take any body shape, any
the
any
first season they
color?
were open to pretty much anything, but then it got to that it was definitely, because of the skeletalness of it, and that was the one that I know all the extras around here at ICs, they'd always get but everybody had to be as skinny as humanly possible. Everybody. And then more and more, we could use regular people for other stuff. And then as time progressed, everybody had to be skinny because it had been the end of the world for so long.
Yeah.
But then towards the end, it went back full circle because there were some of these places that had been surviving long enough and were doing well. So people were back to looking normal again. So it went full circle.
That's awesome. There are a lot of people, one piece of advice I give people is to follow directions. And you've talked about that a little bit, but how often do you put out a casting call with a very specific set of instructions? And like, I'm looking for 5'7" black females in, this body type. And then you get all these other people who are applying because, oh, eventually they'll need me. Like, how often does that happen? And are those people that you just kind of knock off the rolls because they can't follow directions?
To a certain extent, yeah, because it happens every single time. There is a certain crew of people that it doesn't matter if it says male or female or whatever, they will just automatically blind submit. So at least there's a few off the bat that to ignore. But yeah, no, I'm sure even if I don't think I am, in the back of my mind, I'm completely ignoring them because they drive me crazy. But no, it comes up, and every now and then you'll get frustrated because start finding that nobody is reading it. It's like when I post or something that's like in a distant location. Think of this place, Grantville, that's down below Noonan. They love to film at because it's basically this abandoned little town. It's right at the zone, so they can film there, but it's really far, and it'll take you over an hour. So I always post, I'm like, we need some people in Grantville. I'm like, look up where Grantville is before you submit to this. And then I started adding, I was like, if you submit and I email you and ask, can you do this? And then you reply and tell me, no, I can't, Grantville's too far, I will not use you in anything for a year. And I like literally added that to the post and still got at least 2 people I can think of. They'll be like, I'll email them. It's like, well, for sure this will be good. And they'll be like, oh no, I can't go there. So it happens every single time. And I've tried all sorts of things to make sure that people do actually read them, and they still don't.
Yeah, I don't know why that is, because it is
Yeah,
a
I
thing,
really
and it's
don't
been a
either.
thing forever. Like, I don't, yeah, but I guess that helps weed out the dumb
It does.
people who
No,
don't
you
read and the
definitely
crazy.
make mental notes. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, what is, so what kind of, I'm curious how you keep track of all this information. So you say you have a database. Like, do you use Airtable? Do you use, like, is there software that you use? How do you keep track
No,
of
yeah, I mean,
all
it's
of
all
this?
basically I've kept it into it was like this kind of Excel type sheet that my website was started forming, and then I just kept adding to that, and that ended up being the easiest. No, it actually worked with a couple of people trying to figure out something that was like originally there was like a kind of a version of like FileMaker that worked pretty well. But no, I mean, it's all just ended up now. It's kind of just one big long sheet, but it is the easiest to search through and then just kind of add to it. And so that's what's worked out.
Yeah.
It's for all intents and purposes a gigantic Excel sheet.
So it's kind of like a Google form in a sense.
Correct,
Yeah.
exactly. Yep. And that was one that done on little things because Google has actually been good because we can all share, and on project to project, I don't do like an ongoing one, but on any given project, I mean that's been a nice advance because we can have a list and then it can share it with the ADs, share it with costumes if there's like an ongoing group of like featured people we're adding to or something like that.
So how do you, I mean, obviously you've been around for a very long time. You've worked on a lot of great projects. You have a great reputation, but how do you find work? Are you looking through, the IMDb pros? Are you looking through the certain industry letters that tell you when things are coming? Or is this based on relationships with producers and line producers? Is it you just sit around and wait for the phone to call? Like, how do you find work?
Yeah, no, it's a little bit of both, but no, I do. It's like IMDb Pro. I've got a couple of other, I've got some friends that are in the DGA that get some more, specific things that they'll forward me. So it's that, and I'll go and poke around and send out info, and then yeah, but I'd say that works and gets me things here and there. There was one that I sought out myself recently that I got, and then the other thing that I'm on right now is the series that's on the fourth season that I've done forever. So there's always it's nice when there's some ongoing things like that. But yeah, no, I'd say it's about 80% people that I know that either get referred or that I've worked with before, and then another 20% that I managed to dig up.
How do you maintain those relationships with producers over time? Like I know, for crew, it's like when you finish a job or when you're about to finish a job, you start texting your network like, "Hey, just want to let you know I just finished such and such job and I'll be available on this date." I imagine that's not how the conversation goes in your world. How do you build relationships and maintain relationships with people that you may not have worked for the last couple of times?
Yeah, I mean, that's tough. And it was really, it had just kind of been this ongoing thing. So it hadn't really come up. But no, it was nice because during the strike, I actually took some time to do that and went and emailed some, production managers and line producers I hadn't heard from in a while. And it was cool, because it's just not really something that had come up, honestly. I mean, in, 10 years with The Walking Dead and everything else, I was looking for places to take a break, not looking for anything to do. So it was cool. But then now the last few years that's changed. And so, yeah, I just kind of, I mean, just like any other network and hit people up, just kind of see what's going on. But for the most part, I know when people are coming into town, I'll end up hearing. So I just kind of bounce around and just say hi and just kind of look to see what's coming rather
What
than
um what advice do you have for somebody wanting to be an extra? Like, what are some of the things other than like there's a hurry up and wait and they might be bored? Like, what are some of the things that new people have been surprised by or have complained to you about? Like, what are some of the things that they should know going into the job that if they've never been on a set before might not experience in a normal workplace?
Yeah, I guess it's, I mean, even though they try to keep it within reason, I don't know, I would say maybe a comfort factor temperature wise, that if it's really cold, you should kind of come expecting that maybe you're going to be cold. And if it's really hot, you should come expecting maybe you're going to be really hot, and like bring the ones that have gotten best at it figured that there's a certain, nobody's trying to torture anybody, but there's a certain expectation that a lot of times, the places, especially kind of depending on, you can kind of look where you are. If you're in the middle of nowhere, know that it might be a tent or somewhere a little more uncomfortable. So the ones that I'd say are good and have adjusted well are good about not expecting the movie or TV show to completely take care of them and bringing a few things that will help them, like a little fan or some extra water, or, I mean, we've got plenty of water, but you know what I'm saying? It's like that can kind of understand that maybe it's going to be a little bit unpleasant, that nobody's trying to torture you, but you're not going to set in a theater. You're going to go set out in the middle of a field somewhere, and it's going to be 103 degrees tomorrow. And so, and kind of expect, and then, yeah, and like, sometimes, and like somebody said that didn't tell them to bring an umbrella. Maybe there's a certain expectation that I would think is that somehow it gets, because we give them so much information and we have to tell them everything, but it still is like, you're a human going out into the world. If it's going to be raining, bring your umbrella. If it's going to be really hot, don't wear a big coat,
Yeah, common sense is not
Yeah.
often common. Yeah. Anything else you think that they should know kind of going into this as I've never done this, but I'd like to give it a shot. I mean, some of it is big personalities. They're going to be ordered around like you're
Yeah,
in
no,
the
that's a good
military.
point. Yeah, it is. And no, it's like, coming in with a thick skin, and especially, the first few times, and knowing that generally I would say that all in all, everybody's pretty good. I mean, you don't run into too many like yellers these days. There's not really any crazy ADs or PAs. There's a few, everybody's going to have a bad day here and there. But from my experience, like the last many years, is all in all, everybody around here is pretty cool and pretty pleasant. And most of the anything that I work on is always going to be very reasonable. They'll have plenty of water. They're going to be, tell you everything you need to know. And that's the other thing too, is like, we'll always tell you what you need to know. It's like people start getting all panicky. It's like, because a lot of times I always try to explain, it's like, we won't necessarily know exactly what time until the night before, but it's just to be patient and understand. We'll explain everything. And yeah, and be patient on the day too, and know that it might be a little weird, but you'll get used to it. If you like it, I mean, you will. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
And
What is the maybe the harshest conditions? I'm thinking maybe Walking Dead in the summer when it's hot and it's buggy and there's ticks everywhere. Like,
yeah,
what are some of the worst conditions that
I
your
can't think
agents
of
have to
anything that would be worse
worse?
than that one for sure. That was definitely the tops. Yeah, it took, and they loved it too. I mean, it took a special person to know. I mean, yeah, it was like they're just taking naps in the middle of like grassy fields covered in dirt. I mean, just didn't care, just took it where they can. But yeah, they would have like cooling areas. They would just park buses out in the woods. So at least you'd have a place to go and like cool off for a little while. But otherwise, no, it was completely miserable and hot. I think about one of the first ones I did too, that way back, was We Are Marshall, which was
Mhm.
huge period. And
Yeah.
that was a particularly hot summer. It was like high 90s, 100, and we were doing all these football scenes in the like in these stadiums, and people were in these like 70s polyester suits, and we had like multiple people going to the hospital like every day. The ambulance was just constantly rolling out somebody that had collapsed every day. So those two really jump out. And like I said, but The Walking Dead, even as miserable as it was, most people loved it. I'd get about one or two a season that would be like, I remember one lady specifically, she was like, please lose my number. And she did it one day. She was like, that was the worst thing I have ever experienced in my life. But then the other 99 were like, oh my God, I'll do that as many times as you'll let me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I Civil War period pieces. JD worked on a Civil War piece in Savannah in the summer where they're all in wool uniforms, and it was the same thing. Crew members, no matter how much water and sun, shade from the sun that were provided, like people were dropping like flies every day. They don't really realize how hard it can be just to stand outside in the sun all day, and it can
No,
be
for
really
sure.
damn miserable.
Yeah, and luckily nobody like hit their head, and everybody was just went to the hospital and got some fluids. No one was injured, but man, it could have been, because it really felt like it was like every single day.
Yeah. What is the pay range? That's something we haven't talked about
Yeah,
because
that one we've
they
really
have
been
to pay
trying to,
minimum
I mean,
wage.
because with the non-union, yeah, trying to get it as close to $15 an hour as I can, but it ranges. Nobody's tried to dip down below like 11 now that I've seen. So it really ranges from about 12 to $15 an hour and up. I mean, some are doing a little better. But yeah, we're all trying to do as close to 15 bucks an hour as we can. So it's not bad. And it's like usually around $50 for your car. And most of the time that's, pretty good deal. It's not really doing all that much. You're not burning a lot of gas. It's either parked or just doing one little short pass. So that's no, it's been trying to, it's certainly not great considering, but it's okay.
I mean, well, I assume so at that rate, are they getting like OT after 8?
Yeah, most of the time, either 8 or 10, depending, but they'll know where it stands for sure. So yeah, no, that's it, most definitely. And
Yeah.
kick to getting like 25 bucks an hour sometimes for the last couple hours of the day. So it's
Yeah,
cool.
which is way better. I mean, because isn't the minimum wage in Georgia like below 750 or something? Isn't it
Yes, I
really
know. I
low?
believe it is still 7.25 an hour on the books, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
pretty
so that's
nuts.
actually not bad.
No,
I mean,
no,
in the grand scheme of
considering
not doing much.
exactly. No, and that was kind of, I mean, as during COVID and everything else, that luckily kind of forced their hand because I'd be like, hey, man, I mean, we got to pay $15 an hour. No one's going to come because they don't have to. They'd rather not come than come for $10 an hour. And that's what always, too, is like it is cool, but it was like, there has to be some incentives, just it has to make people worth it, people to go to
Yeah.
take their time
Is
to go.
And I'll ask you, and then as an industry in whole, is there enough work for the average person that it could be a full-time job? I mean, probably not right now because things are just,
No.
70% reduced as to what they usually are. But when the town is hopping, could extra work be a full-time job?
Yeah, I think for like the right person with a good, I mean, just, and there's no specific look, but I would say just a good general nondescript look, I would think, I mean, if you have a really specific look or big, giant, crazy curly hair, or you're 7 feet tall, it might be tough. But if you're kind of in the middle and just a regular Joe, then yeah, absolutely. And it certainly has been at times for sure.
Do you find that it also seems like a great job for retirees that are looking to make a little extra
No,
cash? Do you
absolutely. And I
find a
know a
lot of
few
those as
that, yeah,
well?
yeah, the few that, I mean, they've kind of really gotten into the niche. So they've got like good pictures of them and like different outfits, and so now they get it. No, absolutely. For sure. There's some that really get into it and are really good at it too.
I feel like we've talked just about everything. We're a little short on time, but is there anything I've missed that you want to talk about either as the craft of extras casting or casting stand-ins? I mean, is there any ground we haven't covered?
No, I mean, I was trying to think. I'd made a couple of notes of anything I wanted to touch on, but no, I think I've pretty much hit it all. I mean, you know, anyway, it's a cool way to check the whole thing out, and it's worth it for everybody to try at least once. Oh, I
Oh,
would say, yeah, the was one thing that I was going to mention is anybody could go and check out the Georgia Film Office. They've got a nice little place listed with a whole bunch of different extras casting companies, just so you can, it's kind of got it all in one place. It's worth checking out just so you can go and submit. But that's what I would tell anybody too, is that just go and submit to all of them and then just kind of see what pops up.
yeah, and that's what I was just going to say because a lot of people are under the misunderstanding because actors are generally represented by one casting company and they are not. I mean, back in the day everybody used to work with a couple different ones, but that's gotten, that has changed as the town has changed. So you can work as an extra for every company in town
Oh yeah,
and not just
absolutely.
one.
Correct. Yeah, for sure.
What is some terminology? This is something that we should probably close out with, or maybe I should have thought about this in the beginning. What is terminology that they're going to hear that they need to know and understand?
Yeah, I mean, now think about it. I mean, really, because it's like so many people, I mean, they keep it pretty basic. It was like one thing I think about, it's always pops in my head, like the stand-ins. They would always, that's the one thing is like if anybody hasn't done it, they'll always refer to them as second team, presuming that the cast is first team. All of the stand-ins are second team. So that's like one little code word for somebody that hadn't been there before. We always try to explain to anybody because they'll like throw that out. But with extras, I mean, it's like, background action, I guess is one. So they'll come in, they'll line up all the extras, and then they'll give you your little thing. So it's basically if they're trying to make a scene come alive, as they'll break everything down, and then they'll tell everybody what they're going to do. So before they actually call action in a scene, they'll call background action. So the extras know to get moving, so they kind of populate the world before they actually call action, and then the actual cast will do anything. But those are really the only kind of things. Everything, I think we try to keep it pretty simple. I guess call time, that's the time to be there. I actually change it in my emails to report time sometimes, so people don't get confused in case they hadn't done it before. But yeah, and then I think otherwise we kind of like try to keep it, where it'll be all crazy enough without hearing a bunch of words they don't understand. So
Yeah, because the only one that comes to mind for me is some of the instructions that the ADs give, like don't walk across, or banana. Like, what's a banana? And it's like,
yeah,
well, you're moving like the shape of a banana. But yeah, things like, base camp. I think the call
oh
time is
yeah,
important
yeah,
because you get your call time, so you think that's the time I need to be there in the parking lot. But no, that's the time you need to be there to have your car parked, to have taken a shuttle if one is needed, to like you are ready to work on location, reporting to the AD department at the time that is your call time. That's not when you
exactly.
arrive, when you are ready to work and standing there in front of
You could be
everybody with all your
standing
stuff.
there checked in with them. Exactly. And that's why I usually try to like break that down, because sometimes sometimes they're clear that, the time I'm giving you is the time you need to be in the parking lot. And then everything else will come from that. But no, I usually try to break that down pretty specific, because yeah, even for people that have done this a ton, because sometimes that does vary with us. And it's a good point, is because sometimes they're not super specific. It was like the time is the time in the parking lot, or is that the time that you're standing on set? And so I try to make sure break it down and make it as clear as possible, and that's the one thing too, that is like we keep this all because we have to bounce from project to project, is that we keep everything like kind of this formula, so it's mostly the same, but it's never exactly the same. It's always a little different, so I always have to give some little tips. It'll be mostly the same, but every AD or PA does it different. It's always different paperwork. There's some kind of other little weird thing you have to add. So it's the same kind of general plan, but it's always a little different. So there's always some kind of crazy little note we've got to add.
Yeah. And that just made me think of a couple other terms that people may not have realized. You mentioned this in the beginning, and I didn't ask for specifics, but a voucher is just your time card.
Mm-hmm.
Extras holding is where you're going to be held. It could be a tent, it could be a room, it could be a spot under a tree.
Yeah, exactly. A chair under a tree, or not even
Yeah,
a chair.
you've got base camp, which is, where you're going to find the honey wagon, which is your bathroom. It might be called a honey wagon. It could be called a 2-banger, 3-banger, 4-banger. That's how many doors. It's a 2-banger if there's 2 doors, usually the men's room and the women's room. I'm trying to think of what other, other than action cut and back to one. So go back to where you started. Be thinking about where you're moving in space. So if they decide to pick up the scene and say, well, we got the first half of that scene, everybody rotate back to halfway, like, where is that? That's why I always sucked at placing background, because I couldn't remember what I told everybody.
No, exactly. I never,
Like, I
yeah.
don't know where you were. Don't ask me. You were doing
Yeah.
any other little terms that you can think of? Base camp is where you're going to find hair, makeup, and wardrobe, the AD trailer. What about bringing their stuff? So, like you mentioned, somebody's going to bring a laptop. Like, I would probably never bring my laptop and leave it in extras holding. Like, that would make me nervous.
Yeah,
Are there
no, for
things that
sure.
they should and shouldn't bring?
Yep, yeah, and I mean it does. It's like we do. I mean, there's just with anything else in life, and when you're a big group of people in a strange place. Now, we typically say to keep the valuables at a minimum, and it is, but no, I mean, it was like you should only bring what you need, I mean, that's the easiest answer, is because, yeah, it could be a long day and people are going to want some stuff. Luckily, you haven't had too many problems with that, but yeah, no, it's tricky for sure. I was telling you, man, you got to be responsible for it when you do, but generally try to keep everything safe, and you just want to keep it to the bare minimum.
Yeah.
It's going to have your own little space and maybe not a lot of room to keep stuff. So
Yeah. Books and playing cards are your friends.
exactly. Yep.
Awesome. Well, I can't think of anything else. I think I've even exhausted my last minute thoughts.
No, me too. Well, it's definitely covered a lot. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, this was great. And the main reason I wanted to do this for our audience is again because I know you guys need extras all the time, especially in Georgia.
Yeah.
And it's a great opportunity for people to make a little bit of money as a side hustle gig.
No, absolutely.
It's a great place to start as a crew person and without a lot of pressure, look around and see how the machine works and start to meet people and get comfortable so that when you are the first time you're ever on set, you have that comfort zone because it's not you're still going to get butterflies, but you got that first time. And it's a
Exactly.
great stepping stone to acting if that is something that you want to do. And
No,
I
for
think,
sure. Acting, yeah. I mean, but yeah, getting into this all together, it really, really is. It really is.
yeah. Well, thank you.
You're very
This has been
welcome.
fantastic, and I hope everyone enjoys it. We've got 8 panels, maybe 10 by the time I get finished with my recordings of virtual panels only. These will also be available next year. So what we're doing with all of the Creative Conference since COVID is the year after they're done, we're uploading them all to our Atlanta Film Festival YouTube site so they have a life in perpetuity so that people around the world can be educated, which I think is super important. That's what COVID taught me doing the PA Academy virtually, was that I was able to teach people in Ukraine and Costa Rica and Greece,
Now
and
that's too
it was
cool.
fabulous. So I will always probably keep some sort of virtual component because I want people from around the country to have all this great information because it's not Atlanta specific really, other than the unionized versus non-union. So thank you for your time and your education, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Thank you so much.
And tune in to the rest of the Creative Conference,
I
everybody.
will for sure. Absolutely.
Oh, I didn't mean to.